I'm sitting here with a metaphorically dropped jaw because you just don't associate this sort of thing with Barcelona. Well, amid the Euro 2020 drama, this story seems to have dipped somewhat under the radar, but it doesn't make it any less important. And I'm delighted to be joined by our Spanish football writer, Dermot Corrigan. Dermot, can we begin by explaining in summary to the people watching this what has happened and is going on at Barcelona right now?
Maybe the best way to go back to when Neymar left the club, 4 years ago now. Since then, Barca spent a huge amount of money on Dembele, on Coutinho, on Griezmann. They've spent over 1,000 million euros, €1 billion on players going back over a decade, and they haven't been bringing in enough money to pay for that. So they've been racking up debts. They've been taking out short-term loans. When Griezmann was signed, for instance, they had to trigger his release clause at Atletico Madrid, and they just went out and borrowed the money. They already owed lots of money, and they just went out and borrowed another 120 million euros to add to their debts. That just can't go on forever. And the new president, Laporta, has come in and he says, we're going to try and sort out our finances of the club, but it's not something that you can just kind of go simply or refinance the debts and roll it over and hope that things will come right in the end. La Liga have very strict financial fair play laws. Because of the pandemic, it almost gave Barcelona a little bit of breathing space last year, that they weren't forced to make these cuts. But now La Liga said, just stop. You can't keep paying these players that much. You still owe loads of money, and you have to cut the wage bill hugely, and you have to bring in maybe 200 million in transfers this summer, or else, we just won't let you register any more new players. And that's the situation at the moment. Probably a good idea at this stage to mention a Liga salary cap, because it's something that's been there since 2013, but we haven't really talked about that much. It hasn't really had that big an impact, especially on the bigger clubs. A lot of the smaller clubs have had to cut their cloth to stay within their means over recent years. But because Madrid, Atletico, and Barcelona have so much money, it hasn't really impacted on them. But it really is now. Like, if you go back to 2019-20, which is kind of at the peak of the Barcelona boom, they had the largest salary cap in the Liga at 671 million. Last year that was down to 347, and this year it still hasn't been done yet. But at the moment, if Barca don't sort out their finances in some kind of way, it'll be 160 million. So that will mean that Barca are only allowed to have similar salary cap to somebody like Sevilla, less than Atletico, a little bit more than Valencia, but Barcelona will be paying less wages than somebody like Leicester or Everton in the Premier League. And that means that half of their players just will have to go, basically. Even with Messi gone, that unless he re-signs, that helps them to a certain extent. They've been living outside their means for a long time, and La Liga have just said, it can't go on any longer.
If you're not yet an Athletic subscriber, you can make the most of our best ever offer to celebrate the Euros. Go to theathletic.com/Ask Ornstein to sign up for just £1 or $1 per month for the first 6 months and enjoy all of our comprehensive Euros and club coverage. Now, before we get back to Dermot, a question for you. If you were Lionel Messi, what would you do next? Let us know in the comments below. What about the guys that they've already signed?
Yeah, you have people like Coutinho, Dembele, Griezmann, who they still owe, huge amounts of transfer fees for. Maybe something like 20 million on their, amortization, the accounting term that we use it in this kind of term. There's still about 20 million owed for each of those. But Barca can't afford to pay their wages. So realistically, if this wasn't football, if this was another business, those costs would just have to be cut. These parts of the company which are no longer profitable, or which are dragging the rest of the main company down, would have to be sold off. It's not so easy in this case, especially because Coutinho and Dembele are both injured at the minute. So trying to sell them is going to be difficult. Griezmann says he doesn't want to move on. So Laporta and the rest of the new board members at Barcelona, the guys they have running the sporting side of the club there, have got some super huge decisions to make. It could mean, people like Ter Stegen or Frankie de Jong are players who you could raise money for. Trying to sell Coutinho at the minute is going to be very difficult, but trying to sell de Jong or Ter Stegen, much easier. Then you start to think of who foreign clubs or Europe's richest clubs really want. And, Pedri, Ansu Fati, Ilaix, who came through last season. These are the crown jewels in Barca's squad, the people who the fans and Ronald Koeman and Laporta, they all want to build a new team around, but they're also the assets who they can get the most money for. So when you're in this kind of a a super difficult financial situation. These are the type of really, really tricky and difficult decisions that have to be made.
Well, the cull has already begun with the likes of Trincao on loan to Wolves, Junior Firpo permanently to Leeds United. You've mentioned others there that could go and potentially decimate the Barcelona team that we've come to know. But tell us about the new signings that they've made and the difficulties they're having around them.
Yeah, it was strange, really, because everybody knew Barca were bankrupt, basically. All the talk was about the huge debts, and suddenly they announced 4 new signings at the end of the season, which, didn't make much sense to me at the time. And there was talk about how Aguero had agreed a pay cut. He was going to be on less money than he was at Manchester City, and he was kind of being sold as, it's good value. It's a proven goal scorer that we're getting on a free, who's agreed to take a wage cut. But La Liga said, this is crazy. This just isn't possible. Until, sure, you can sign these guys for free if you want, and you can pay them less wages, but you have to take people off the wage bill first. You can't just keep adding on more names and tell us oh yeah, we'll sort it out. We'll cut it in the future. Don't worry about it. Reality, as I keep saying, it's just kind of caught up with them, that they're a bit like the Roadrunner characters who've run off the cliff. And for the last couple of years, maybe Barca have been suspended in midair as they go along, and now they're going to fall. And when they hit the ground, it's going to be really painful. You imagine that, Aguero and Depay and Eric Garcia and Emerson Royal, the 4 players that they've signed, in the end will end up playing for Barca, but that's not sure at the minute. It has happened before that La Liga teams have signed a player and then ended up selling him again because it didn't make sense to them to add him within their wage bill at the end. Martin Di Michelis, people might remember, was at Atletico Madrid for a couple of months and ended up at Man City in not quite as dramatic a case, but a similar case. And either they get rid of a lot of their big earners who are at the club at the minute, or these guys just won't be able to play for Barcelona ever.
I'm sitting here with a metaphorically dropped jaw because you just don't associate this sort of thing with Barcelona. And I think some of the fans of other clubs listening to it might be licking their lips at who they might be able to prize from Barcelona, or will some of the new signings like a Depay even end up elsewhere? That all remains to be seen. But maybe the biggest question of all is what on earth happens with Lionel Messi?
Yeah, it is huge, and it has been, again, it's something we've been talking about for a long time. This isn't something that Messi, his father, and agent Jorge, or Barca President Laporta have been surprised by. Negotiations have been ongoing for a long time, but Barca just cannot afford to pay Messi's wages anymore. They've been looking at different ways to try and sort it out, to tell him that, defer some of the payment of his wages into a later date when, in theory, fans are back in the stadiums and their finances are back on a better situation and they'll be able to pay him. But that's just racking up an extra debt for Barca into the future. Talk of offering him an ambassadorship going forward, decades to try to keep him happy and make him stay. But realistically, unless Messi takes it a monumental pay cut, he's on, something like 100 million euros a year. That would take up, at the minute, that would take up more than half of Barca's complete wage bill for the season, and you just can't have one player, no matter who he is, earning that much. He's also 34. He's still very, very good, but realistically, he's not the player that he was. So either Messi decides to take something like, I wrote in the piece, an 80-90% pay cut. That's kind of speculation because who knows at this stage. But if you just look at the figures and you write it down, Barca can only afford to pay something like that to Messi. He could still be the best paid player at the club, even if he was on 10% of what he was earning before, which again is, it's crazy. It's a unique situation really that the Barca find themselves in, but they are in that situation and they can't avoid it anymore.
Just quickly, do you predict that he'll be playing for them next season or not?
It looks to me, this is not from any inside information from speaking to the Messi camp, but it looks to me like PSG will be the only possible outcome for it. If you speak to people who do know Messi, not his very inner circle, but just people who know him and his family, they still find it very difficult to think of him moving anywhere else. It'd be a lovely gesture for him to say, look, I will take that huge pay cut and I'll stay. I'll be the guy to, even if, if say De Jong has to go, Coutinho, Griezmann, all these guys are gone and you're left with Messi, maybe Piqué and Busquets who've also taken a huge pay cut. And then you have the young guys, Pedri, Ansu Fati, and you build a new Barcelona team and Messi is still there for a couple of years. That's a lovely gesture. It would cost Messi and his family and his foundation and the Messi company organization, which is a big multinational in itself. It would cost them a lot of money. But, there's, again, as Laporta and Barcelona have very hard decisions to make, Messi and the people around him also have a really tough decision to make over the next couple of weeks.
We'll wrap it up by asking you where things go from here. Could Javier Tebas and La Liga let Barcelona off, one of their superpower clubs, or is that not possible at this point? And just sort of quantify how big this is for world European football, because Barcelona is such an important player on and off the pitch, in the transfer market and beyond.
Yeah, Javier Tebas has been very clear about it. I actually asked him myself. We were on a Zoom with La Liga president and international journalists 2 weeks ago now. Just asked him what are the opportunity, or what would be the chances of them making an exception for Messi. He was very clear that no, we just can't do that. Tebas himself,
but for Barcelona, full stop. Could he make an exception for Barcelona? No
exceptions can be made, especially at this kind of scale, because Tebas, when he came in as La Liga president, he's really closely associated with these financial controls, and they've done a really good job of cleaning up La Liga. Going back a decade or so, the Liga clubs were going bankrupt all the time. All that kind of thing has stopped. Tebas has done, whatever you think about different elements of Tebas' presidency of La Liga, the financial controls has been a huge success. If you make an exception now for Barcelona, other clubs are going to try to look for something similar, and the whole thing could fall apart. So he said no. And on what it means for just generally for the transfer market in Europe, it does slide things towards just a couple of clubs, maybe the clubs who are owned by wealthy backers, your PSGs and your Manchester Cities, the Premier League as well, just being much stronger than everybody else. Like Madrid and Atletico also have financial problems, not nearly as dramatic as Barcelona, but Madrid haven't signed a player, they haven't paid a transfer fee now for, since Rainier in January of 2020. It's gone back a long time, 3 transfer windows. Doesn't look like they're going to sign anybody for big money this summer as well. So it's centralizing things, or it's causing a problem, or as the Spanish team see it, it's causing a problem which the Super League was supposed to sort out. Barcelona have been, Laporta, surprising a lot of people maybe by being a really close ally of Madrid President Florentino Perez in the debate over the Super League, also talking about UEFA being unfair, a cartel, all this type of stuff. That comes from Barcelona, hoping against hope that you could get the hundreds of millions that the Super League would provide them almost for free, would just fall out of the sky and save them.
Dermot, this is Barcelona, but just not as we know it. And I think it's going to be a story that people should keep their eye on. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak again soon.
Cheers, I really enjoyed it.
Hello, I'm David Ornstein, and I'm here to tell you what The Athletic has planned across its podcast network during the Euros. You can catch me alongside Mark Chapman and a range of other Athletic writers on the England show throughout the tournament, bringing you the very latest news and insight from the England camp every single day. Prior to the big kickoff, we're releasing an 8-part documentary series telling the stories of the past 8 tournaments, starting with the sounds and smells of Euro 88 and finishing in 2016. There'll also be nightly episodes of the Totally Football Show, 9 zonal marking podcasts from Michael Cox's Tactics and Analytics team, and Adam Hurrey's Football Clichés will take a look at the competition's alternative storylines. So, with what felt like a never-ending domestic season finally behind us, we've got all of your Euro 2020 needs covered. Check out every show for free wherever you get your podcasts.